Welcome back, everyone, to Pensive Politics, Mr. Watson, for this part two of my interview with the wonderful Lily Tang Williams. So, Lily, we left off talking about your experience in American politics, particularly at the state capitol that you went to when you came to America. So just please start off from there and go as long as you'd like.
Yeah, well, good to see you again, and Christine. That we left last time. I was talking about when I got laid off by a corporate America. I had the time to get involved with politics. I volunteered to go to state capitol in Colorado and Denver to be an intern with a Republican, I think a budget committee chair. So I learned a lot, but the first day experience was very shocking. I went there, I did not expect inside the state capitol would be like a zoo. Lots of people. And I did not figure out who is who. Then later I was asking, who are those people? Then I learned this new word called special interest, lobbyist, arranged thinkers. Like I come home, look kind of depressed. My husband said, "What's wrong? Did you have a good day?" I said there were no people representing us, a middle-class working family and taxpayers. That was my first day experience at the state capitol. Yeah, so, but I learned a lot, and I enjoy going to the hearings, and that's where I learned to how to, even later speak in 2 or 3 minutes, right? You see those people when they testify, you only get 2 or 3 minutes. You have to fire your points, and then after that, I think I mentioned that, and I got into HOA and start to learn what is the bottom level of grassroots self-governance, how that works. And then later I got into charter school. When I got laid off, I pulled my kids out of public school, put them into charter school. That's where I learned, oh, as a parent, you can be actually more involved in your children's education, exercise their parental control and the parental rights by getting involved in a charter school. So I did become the board member. I had to run, and later I was a chair. I think the principal did not do a good job, so I had to call her and to fire a principal. I was kind of very empowering feeling because when I call her to say, sorry, yeah, we're not gonna renew your contract, and she said, you'll fire me? I said, yes, I'm sorry. I said, the board decided we're not going to renew your contract. So all those experiences really gave me a good feeling about being an American citizen. I can testify, I can oppose support bill, I can get involved in your grassroots community at the bottom. And that was a great experience. You learn English, you learn how to also make friends and persuade people with your argument and with the facts and data. That was great.
Wow. Yeah, and you learned very quickly a truth that eludes most Americans, the fact that there's a lot of trash over at the state capitals. There's a lot of nonsense over at the state capitals. You learn that very, very quickly. And I wish most Americans who have access to their state capitals at any time of the day during the session would just go there and see that for themselves. But a lot of people delude themselves, in my opinion, to thinking that, oh, my guy's in office. My guy promised me this, and he's doing it. But in all reality, your guy's serving special interests. Yeah, but
well, you're right.
yeah.
You're right. Though people have to get more involved. You have to hold them accountable. I learned the politicians will make promises when they are dealing with their voters, but they don't necessarily keep their promise. They don't necessarily explain to you why they voted for some bills in a certain way.
Right.
So I always tell people, do not forget they work for us. So you need to make that individual voters impact. Some people feel like, oh, maybe I just don't, I don't make difference. You do. Each voter, each taxpayer can make difference if you just become politically informed and politically involved. Nowadays, now you can go to Zoom meeting, send a note to ask them support a post bill in 1 minute in your home on computer, on Zoom. even
Yep.
testify on Zoom. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you know, when you got involved in American politics, what was the feeling like, other than knowing the fact that, hey, you're not in China anymore, you have a voice. What was the feeling like, and what was the biggest lesson that you learned from your involvement in American politics?
Well, I actually learned that I think it started even like early 2000s when I first got involved, and especially later, I feel like some of the terms, the change of language they use, especially from a special interest lobbyists and from the left, I feel like some of the words they're using sounds familiar, and I feel the impression is that lots of people just really rely on government, a bigger and more powerful, a more helpful government, but also more taxes. And since no people really represented the working middle class, so we did not really have much to say in where money is going, spent on what. And so I started to really wake up 2008 when Bush administration, used taxpayers' money, bail out the banks. And also after September 11, remember he passed the Patriot Act,
Yep.
and also the No Child Left Behind, more centralized education. I think during his, even I voted for him as Republican when I first time in 2000, but I become more and more worried, like why is government getting so big and have more and more power over citizens? So I start to really get kind of alarmed by what's going on. I got more upset. The more I know about politics, the more worried I become to say this direction is not good. The governments get bigger and bigger. So the year I become more like a libertarian and thinking independently, it was 2008. I feel like the Republican Party actually abandoned me, abandoned the small limited government principle. So I got involved with Libertarian Party and started to go to their meetings. There were smaller numbers, but there were lots of freedom and loving people. And that's when I got involved with them. And they then told me to say, we needed you testify 2013 to against the gun control. And that was first time I ever went to testify in a public setting. It was long line in state capitol. People were upset about, and Democrats wanted to limit magazines for our AR-15s. I was very scared, so I lined up in long line. And so finally I discovered if I'm gonna just wait there passively, I would never have my voice to be heard because, people there sometimes stay like past midnight. So I was using my Chinese survivor, like the communist, country street smart sense to say, I need to get in there earlier. How do I do that? So I went to talk to a group leader of the Rocky Mountain Governor Association, said, can I go in with you? Because he was called as the expert witness to testify, so he did not have to wait in line. So I went in with him, and first time got my voice to be heard. But they voted the party line anyway. And that's the first year I also published my article on National Review Online, say guns against tyranny. I started to tell my stories, absolutely oppose gun control. And of course, Colorado it's moving more and more left, and that was a good lesson for me. Then 2014, I started to run for state house in Colorado. And 2016, I ran for U.S. Senate. I knew I was a Libertarian Party candidate. I could not win, but I just wanted to tell my stories to wake up Americans. Don't go down that path. Bigger and more government and more socialist countries bad for us. I don't want to live that again. And but it seems like, look at where we are today. And after 2016, my race is over. I came to New Hampshire and wanted to check out my other options in the future, where I would like to live. Because to me, freedom, that's where the home is. So the more freedom a state has, the more a draw to me. I don't care about, which state. I mean, if Colorado is total blue, I will leave. So that's when I decided I will move to New Hampshire. And we did move 2019.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so Colorado became a little bit too authoritarian for you, so you moved over to New Hampshire. Is that right?
Right, Colorado. No, look at today, even worse. And so I'm glad, actually, I'm glad I left. I also love New Hampshire. If you have never been here, come here, visit. It's beautiful. Everybody's got lots of land space, hiding in the woods, and you love the free, like live free or die motto, and extremely friendly gun laws where you can conceal carry without permit. You can open carry. So we have constitutional carry. And the people here, lots of natives are very, very free spirited. So I feel like those are my kind of people. Plus, I love big tall trees. And then you have White Mountain, they have rivers, lakes where I can maybe try to learn how to fish, go fishing, And the people are super nice. People say, Lily, why do you want to go to a state with 97% white? Not many Chinese there. I say, well, I'm not a member of Identity Politics. Why do I have to go where lots of Chinese are? Exactly. I want to go where it has more freedom. I truly trust American people. We're always openly warm and welcoming to me in Colorado. I mean, there's mostly white too. But I did not really experience the discrimination except one road age. Somebody called me a bad name and I stood up for myself and then she was gone. So it's like, maybe I'm just not too sensitive. I don't play victim. I just stand up for myself. So far, I feel like the New Hampshire people are extremely warm, just like the Texas people when I was in the South. And they cannot judge me based on my skin color, my Chinese face, my accent. And, I make friends, from all over the world here.
I have always said that if a libertarian-minded politician were to arise in any state, New Hampshire would be fertile ground for them to arise. And maybe that'll be you one day, Lily. That's
well, I hope so. Of course, that's the voters' decision. I just enjoy connecting with people to share my stories. That I'm so worried about America today. Especially our young kids, even include their, parents, like people who are maybe 30s and 40s, and they just rely on government too much. And even that's where I walked away from. I walked away from a total totalitarian country, a communist party controlling China today, 100% in everything. And why do people in this country want the government to be their saviors? I thought Americans supposed to rely on themselves, help each other in your communities, in your families, and hard work, and self-responsibility, self-ownership. That should be in the blood of Americans. And I was kind of really disappointed, of course, during the COVID lockdowns. I just could not believe that the people will just comply, and they shut down small businesses. They shut down schools, they shut down churches, they shut down almost just like our normal human being lives. I understand for 2 weeks, flatten the curve, but now it's like 1 year or longer.
Exactly.
And you see so many people just to keep their head down and complied. I was really worried. I said, I don't recognize America I had in mind when I choose to come here. So I decided maybe some people are silenced, afraid. I said, I'm gonna go out even more louder, more often than before to tell my stories. We don't want to go down that path. We don't want to have China's style lockdown. We don't want to have China's that kind of hardcore, one party dictatorship to tell you how to live your life. We are human beings. We have our dignity. We need to treat it with respect. We demand our politicians respect us. Respect our dignity and respect our businesses and respect our spirit and personal choices instead of just push down everything on us. I'm so worried and so tired of it.
Absolutely. And you have every right to be, and so am I. And I think with voices like yours, we will be able to beat back that malevolent tide from taking over America. Now, unlike a lot of career politicians, however, you yourself have had a position and do have a job outside of the political sphere. So why don't you walk me through how the free market kind of helped you start your career and how that has shaped your perspective today?
Well, I always dreamed to be self-employed, be like a entrepreneur. So I will have my financial freedom. When I got laid off in year for 2000 from telecom bubble, and I decided to start my business. I thought, hey, I'm bilingual, bicultural. I have a Chinese law degree. Maybe I can help companies to do international trade. And so I become a self-employed consultant. But it was not profitable for first 8 years because it's just not enough business in Denver area that time. And so I was kind of depressed, of course, and thank goodness my husband had a good income. We had a mortgage to pay, 3 kids to raise. And I was constantly thinking about other ideas, how I can make more money and contribute, right, to the family. So 2008, I finally saw the opportunity in real estate market because of the housing bubble and bursted. And I took basically the first chance I got with this equity line of credit on our primary home. The only thing we had was our primary home with my husband's one job. And we decided, I convinced my husband, let me to get into residential business, to buy like a cheap single family homes and turn them into rental. Then I learned to use other people's money, basically use bankers' money to finance your investment. So you buy one, fix up, rent out, then you go back, take the money out and buy another one, kind of like a slow balling, And I, of course, before I did that, I read lots of books and, the Poor Dad, Rich Dad really gave me lots of good ideas years before. But until opportunity came, I said, cash flow property. So I learned to apply. It's like a play like the game Monopoly, right? It's like a play Monopoly in real life. Our family always play that game, whenever we have holiday breaks.
It's a fun game.
Yeah, I know. And you just have to play that in real life, right? You invest, you buy, you borrow money, you get a loan. And so that have proven to be successful business. So my husband is able to retire earlier, and so can move to New Hampshire because our investment in residential real estate has been successful. And I just manage our properties now from a home with my husband's help. So I can do speakings, I can involved with political activism. And I also have another business to be the expert witness for court. Expert in Chinese culture, Chinese legal system, all that. So I'm living American dream after 8 years of failure, but you never let the failure to stop you. There's nothing can stop you. It's a free country. You keep failing until you find a good market where you can exercise your skills, you control, you make that happen, and you become profitable. And then you have your financial freedom. So far, I always tell young people, when you're young, you got to focus on to create a job for yourself. So you don't rely on other companies. You don't rely on government. You need to rely on yourself. If I can do it, even without speaking fluent English, I started this country with $100. So can you. You were born in this country. What stop you? I'm Chinese. I have yellow skin. So what? That's not good excuse. So I think that I hope that young people will, feel like you got to carry that responsibility on your own shoulder. There's nobody is going to change your life. It's going to make you successful, enjoying the prosperity you have in this country. It's all on your shoulder. Of course, by having good education helps. So that's back to the issue that, hey, so why some people cannot succeed? They're stuck. Especially our Black brothers and sisters stuck in the inner city, and that's not, educating our kids with quality, why can't we let them to have a school choice? Let the parents have a school choice. And you look at those places, lack of school choice is in blue cities and blue states. But then they talk about, they speak for you all the time, Christine, Black Lives Matter. Of course they matter. Of course they matter. But because they matter, don't you want them to have prosperity, achieve American dreams? Instead of get stuck and you have single families, very high percentages, then you have no father models, role models at home, and they're on welfare checks all the time. Something is wrong in this picture. I love all Americans. I want them all succeed, live American dream. But I don't want the people on the left to speak for us because they always think, oh, you don't know how to even get a voting ID, Christian. You don't know how to go get a vote.
I saw.
Somebody else to say that, oh, you're racist. They use racism to block lots of people to think out of box to achieve success. I don't want them to speak for me as agents for sure, because I'm fine. I live in this country, live my American dream, I'm fine. But I want other people to have the same opportunity, especially our children, especially your generation, Of
course. No, yeah. And I think that the people who try to pretend to help us with problems that may or may not exist or may have very complex origins to them, those are the same people who are actually hurting us the most. The people who are trying to convince Black folks or Asian folks to stop Asian hate campaign now, that apparently Asians are hunted in America and they these are the same people who are hurting us because they are enshrining us with a mentality of beggary and defeatism that does not get us to our true potential. And so, leading off this topic, what is your opinion of the Stop Asian Hate idea? Do you feel as an Asian American woman that there is this insufferable climate of hate against you in the country, or is this just a marketing campaign?
It's I think I did some research after all this came out. And if you look at the data from the actually Department of Justice 2018, okay, the crimes committed by other minorities are higher than the white people. But during this kind of movement, we're supposed to only mention when the white people are the criminals, which is not true. And vice versa, Asian committed crimes, the rate is very low. That's what I'm saying. The highest, number one groups committed crimes against the Asians with violence are the people of color. Why? We need to have a conversation about that. Why, right? And because this country will be, I believe all men are created equal. But when you have a data facts like that, we should have a rational conversation about that. Instead of to say Asian hate, Asian hate, white supremacy. It's like you're not even based on data. Maybe there are actual, incidents because of COVID. Somebody will spit on you and the single agents are like maybe spreaders or something. But the thing is though, I think there are lots of other factors involved. For example, if we talk about critical race theory, white supremacy, American systemic country, those kind of rhetorics by media, I think that generate lots of division in our country and envy and hatred. So for example, in Washington School District, they categorize aging now as white because aging average household income is higher than the white. That's why we got discriminated by Ivy League schools, Yale, Harvard, and they have quotas. So our kids who score the highest in standardized testings were told they have a personality issues and they shouldn't have too many people in the universities, too many agents. So don't you think that's discrimination against agents? But they don't call that. They don't call that out. And even Yale, DOJ's case against Yale is dropped after Biden become president. And lots of parents alliances are not happy with that. We want to ask them to take a concrete actions to actually level the playing field we feel like we were discriminated, but you are on the side to say stop aging hate. Why can't you say stop aging discrimination by our universities, right?
Yep.
You know, it just, so I think people should not be used as a talking points, as useful idiots. Doesn't matter which skin color you have, because we all are American citizens. That kind of rhetoric is just to create hatred and division and envy. And of course, when people feel like that way, there's more violence against the agents. And the California law do not help. If you, let's say, their law is like, if you rob somebody under $950, you cannot call cops. They don't come to, you know, charge this guy with felony. And so more and more crimes like that happen. You have Chinese lady got robbed right out of the bank. So they were targeted because they have cash in their pocket. So there are lots of issues. I wish we would just like you and me sit down, talk like this. Let's work out solutions, help each other out. Instead of this, so sad for me to say Americans are so divided, because, you know, I mentioned to you under Mao, that's what they're good at. It's a Marxist communist tactic, and divide and conquer. And it's typical Marxist theory. When you talk about critical race theory, it's basically separate America into two giant groups, oppressors and oppressed. And who are oppressors? White, male, you know, whatever the groups they put in there, right? Or your Christian conservatives, and then oppressed, people of color, poor, woman. It's identity politics. And Mao used that to conquer everybody, making him a god, have more power. The party has absolute power, you know, to control the whole economy, everyday people's lives, all the press, all the propaganda machines, all the schools, and guess what? People who supported them, you know, who were so-called oppressed groups, supposed to get land, free health care. It never came. All the promises were empty. Instead, we were starving. Instead, 20 million people died during the divisive, bloody 10 years cultural revolution. And I sometimes would tell reporters, like, hey, you got to have some conscience, report the truth. Because if you just use a political talking point and divide our people in America, when the real Marxists take over the country, they will come after you too. Like in China today, you have to get license to practice journalism. There's no free press. Do we want that in this country? Do our journalists want that happen to them? So I just don't know if they really learn history or not. You know, when I talk about Marxists, people say we're not Marxists. We are anti-racist. You know, whatever name you use. But when you talk about the magic term, right? Oh, America is a systemic racist country. We need to have equity. We all need to have equitable outcomes. What does that tell you? That's the Marxist term. It's about wealth redistribution. It's about we all get to the same place with the same outcomes. There's no same outcomes unless you all want to be equally poor and starved and enslaved. That's what it is. You're not 1%. You and I will never be top 1%. So we are just regular people, want to live our regular lives and pursue self-interest and happiness. But when you divide the country like that, you know how wild control now is, like our cancel culture, our work class, they all act like they know the best and they cancel everybody. But I say lots of people are silenced, including classic liberals who might be Democrats on the left side. They need to speak up now. Otherwise, you might be too late. They will come after all of us, including them. So it is time for people to speak up, to really protect our, you know, free speech and freedom of thought.
I entirely agree with you. And I think that this sort of perverse cultural revolution that's happening in the United States bodes very bad things for the foundational principles of this country. But I do think that there are enough of us who realize that A lot of the pleasantries that the woke class and their academics and their intelligentsia try passing down to us, the idea that I need to be saved by a government, the idea that you need to be saved by a government, the idea that we need diversity people to save us, all this stuff which tries to handicap my free will and removes me from the equation of things that intimately involve my own life, all of those things are against the American spirit. They are against the principles that this country was founded upon. They are against the labor and the creativity this country was founded upon. And we recognize that. And that's why I think that this is not going to succeed in the long run. It looks scary right now. It looks menacing, but I do believe it'll fall. And before we move from this topic, just real quick, I have this idea that cancel culture exists everywhere and has been around for decades upon decades, even centuries. What was most similar to cancel culture, to current American cancel culture under Maoist China and currently under Xi Jinping's China? What resembles cancel culture over there in that country?
I think it's identity politics. So Mao will get the people into two big groups. So 5 black classes people will belong to the, of course, oppressors group. Then 5 red classes, like my family, working poor workers class, will go to the oppressed group, like workers. And when you separate people like that, so it's constantly chaos and hatred, envy, and guilt. And the cancel culture also reminded me the process of some of those routines and rituals people go through. It's called, like struggle sessions. So for example, if you're white, you're doomed to be racist, or you are so-called black classes under Mao, you go to self-criticism class struggle sessions. So you will criticize yourself, you will apologize for being black, and of course you apologize for being white and racist, even though you might not be racist or black class, but then your families were, your grandparents were, and even though you are white today, you're not racist, but you got to think about the slavery history. So you will apologize for something you never did, your ancestors did. That's insane. That's like not fair, is it? And plus, they use this opportunity to form public opinion against basically the certain ideologies, a certain kind of people. So they want everybody to be with them, be woke, and they're loud, they're mob-like, and they make you lose your jobs. They make you apologize, self-criticize, and going through all those, struggle sessions. And when they teach this to our kids, I just cannot, forget. Oh, red guards are saying again. And those kids are totally indoctrinated in schools to say, long live Chairman Mao. Here we will say, anti-racist. I'm an active anti-racist. And then you call out everybody who is not with you. It's just so sad. It's so similar. I just don't believe people will buy into that. I do agree there are individual cases of discriminations and racism, but we need to address those by having conversations. But if all they do, like red guards do, they just shut you down. They just denounce you, publicly shame you, and make you write the self-criticism. If you don't comply, you go to so-called now educational, re-educational camps. Well, that's how you destroy the society, the fabrics of civil society. It's a free speech, and it's everybody is united, live in peace, coexisting in peace. So people might not know, oh, is that a Marxist term when you say equity, racial equity? People might not know. I need to point out, it is. It is a Marxist term. It is a Marxist strategy to divide the people into those groups. Then later, identity politics fight each other. Then who do you think is going to benefit for that kind of ride? It's the party. It's the leaders who control the party. It will become 1984 society. very, very scary to think about that.
Absolutely. And again, just seeing the similarities between this and what happened in a lot of these revolutions is just very scary. I know that some people will be thinking, well, how can you compare them? They're very different situations. And guess what? I'm sure the people before the Maoist revolution, I'm sure the people before Hitler rose in Germany, I'm sure all of them thought, hey, this nothing bad can happen to us. This is a different situation, because there have been instances of tyranny throughout history. But the problem is, when you blind yourself to the possibility of evil things happening because of the evil ideas that precipitate them, then you are really laboring in ignorance. Evil things happen because there are evil ideas behind them. And I genuinely believe a lot of the ideas that may seem benevolent, innocuous, like racial equity and social justice, beneath them are some really evil assumptions and conclusions about human beings and about how we should structure society. And I'm happy that we recognize that and we're trying to come against that.
Can I add one more thing?
Oh, please.
The similarities I saw is last summer. Of course, all the protests and demonstrations break out in the street. When I saw people start to attack American culture in the name of anti-racism, white supremacy, they were toppling down statues and they were burning stuff. Then they were looting to justify, we can loot because we're oppressed, and we can go even hurt people and steal from their shops because, we got paid, by some kind of reparation for their past history. That is a cultural revolution, just what happened under Mao. The thing is, people don't know the history, they don't recognize it. See, the foundation for that is wrong. The foundation of all this is America is a systemic racist country. Well, how does they explain to us? Immigrants who flee totalitarian countries come here, work hard, achieve American dream. A systemic racist country will not allow to do that, allow us. Then how do you explain? We had a black president for 8 years. Now we have a vice president is half black, half Asian. They should come out actually to thank American for the country who, led them to achieve their dreams. I just cannot believe people who are on the top, even though they have people of color just successful. I'm happy for them, and they achieve maybe their success and through some kind of education, hard work, maybe intelligence, whatever that is. I respect that. But how could those people come out, want to tell us to hate America? America is a racist, systemic country, and we need to bring that down. Replace with what? You want to defeat capitalism? That's what Mao told us. And we're starving to death. And you want us to replace American culture, American law society, American civil institutions with what? With Marxism, with equity, racial equity. I don't see that bright future for anybody. We'll be equally poor. And the people who actually respect each other, like I saw this video, like school is teaching this black high school student. What do you see from this picture? I see two friends hang out. Basically, it's a white girl and black girl. I saw two friends hang out. This looking again. Say, teacher wants him to dig and dig. Teacher wants to install some kind of division, hatred into his head. There's oppressed black girl, and here's a white privileged girl, and she's racist. That's just, how are you gonna people even hang out, right? I mean, people would be more worried, or maybe I should be more quiet and separate from each other. That doesn't help the country at all. But that's what the communists do. They want you to hate. They do not want you to love. Just remember that. I think we should all promote love.
Right, absolutely, I agree with you. And now, speaking of all this woke stuff, earlier today, or earlier a few days ago, I think earlier today actually, a guy named Vivek Ramaswamy, I hope I'm saying his name right, I'm probably butchering it, but he has written a book called Woke Inc. And he said something about China that I think is very interesting. He was talking about in this interview in the context of how you can't call the coronavirus the Wuhan virus because apparently that's racist. He said the following sentence: And we have to ask ourselves why. And the answer is crystal clear to me. It is that China has mastered the art of using wokeness as a geopolitical tool against the United States. He goes on to say, and if there is any doubt about that, just look at the comments of Xi Jinping when European leaders pressed him last year on their human rights records. He cites Black Lives Matter as a way of saying the US is no better. Their top diplomat in Alaska last month falsely claiming that Black Americans are being slaughtered, and he hopes the US does better on human rights. So Ramaswamy here is really suggesting that Xi Jinping is using wokeness and implanting the seeds of wokeness into American society through his propaganda machine. Now we understand that China is a very, very malevolent and authoritative, powerful, propagandistic force throughout the world. And I mean, you know that they have ships down in Latin America. They have this Belt and Road Initiative. They're investing a lot in Caribbean countries and signing these sort of loan agreements that really the other countries who are much poorer can't really win. They are really involved in Africa. I mean, the Uyghur stuff. There's just so much going on. How should we understand all of this stuff? How do we make sense of all of the various aspects of Chinese manipulation in the world? And also, do you believe that a lot of woke ideologies are being used by China to destroy or deride America?
Well, I know what they're capable of. And I know the party's policy, the strategy back in 2016 to bring down America, to infiltrate into America by actually manipulating the US elections and getting involved with campaigns, train their candidates, and even invest in some congressional district where the vote difference only 10,000 votes or 5,000. And if they invest there, hire their workers, and they can actually, influence the voters' choices. They also have infiltrated into the United States through Confucius Institute. The Chinese government funded so-called, they call that cultural organization to teach language and culture in the United States, all over the Western democracy countries, Chinese language and culture, but actually they're trying to promote China, to make China look good, make a party look good. They also give schools, universities money. So follow the money, and you take their money, you have to sign the agreement to say, I will comply with the China laws. Chinese government have been very, very smart, deliberate to infiltrate into America and Western democracy countries without finding one shot. That's why they can talk you down like that. They know our society fabric is very weak when it comes to racial tension. So they use that against us, and by also infiltrating into our media, our social media. Whenever I post something against CCP, I don't get lots of feed. People don't get my post. And whenever I have questions about virus, and I got a warning from Facebook, are you sure you want to talk about this? Your post has a COVID, has a vaccine in it. I'm so sick of that, because every day I face that. So I was not offended when people were talking about China virus, because the Chinese started in China talk Wuhan virus every day, Wuhan virus, before we got shut down. So we were not offended. So why would the Chinese people be offended here just because a president was talking like that? And they're still talking about UK variants, Spanish flu, South America, South Africa variants. See, people are not offended when they use other countries' names. It just means the origin of the virus. And the people don't understand that the left want to speak for us, even though they don't care how we truly feel. Then they always have some people who bought into their propaganda to go to another side. Let me tell you, the anti-aging rallies, end of March, they had, guess who was involved? Chinese consulate in San Francisco, in New York. Yes.
Wow.
Yes, I have a Chinese piece of document, Twitter, and showing you where to go. And consulate said where to go, what signs to hold. I watched a video. There are lots of Chinese share information like that. the one guy holding anti-aging hate, and with another sign to say, hold the CCP accountable. And he was told to go away, take down that CCP sign. And also that, and there is a talk about they are trying to support Andrew Yang to run for New York City as a mayor, you know? So whenever you have Chinese consulate promote certain candidates, I'm always very suspicious. Why, right? Why? And then they organize events like this. Don't know if money is behind it or not, but I remember when the Hong Kong people and faced some opposition in overseas countries, like the Hong Kong people who support democracy movement. Now you have other mainland Chinese opposed to that in Australia, in Germany, in England. Those are all organized by the consulates, pro-party people. And their propaganda machine called the United Front. It's huge. It's probably the largest propaganda machine in the world was the Xinhua News Agency. People need to be worried about it and be cautious about it. Don't just buy into rhetorics. Remember, they want to achieve their so-called China dream designed by Chairman Xi. That China will take over United States as the #1 economic power and political power in the world. And the United States is their probably #1 target. And they feel like they have succeeded. And because now we kind of have one party rule now in this country, right? And they're friendly towards CCP. They never call them out. When China covered up the coronavirus spread, they let the people get out of Wuhan after they shut down Wuhan, but 5 million people traveled all over the world, all over China. They did not hold them accountable. They continue to fund the World Health Organization, which helped China to cover up to say the virus was not from human to human back in January even. So there are lots of things can make dots connect. But our media do not report that. They don't even call China covered up. They do not ask China to report their true numbers. China coronavirus case numbers and death numbers just stopped last summer. No reporting. But all they targeted was our own president, his administration, instead of calling China. And what they did to Hong Kong even recently, you know, imposed the national security on Hong Kong. So it's like they really don't have much credibility anymore. I encourage people to look for your own source of truth and the data and the information. They cannot trust mainstream media anymore because it is infiltrated by lots of propaganda and CCP influencers and even money. So be aware.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we're winding down here a little bit, but before we go, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much, Lily, for being here, for having this interview. You are a wonderful voice, and again, I think that your message is very important. But before we go, I want to ask, how do we stop it from happening here? How do we stop this from taking over our institutions, taking over the minds of Americans, convincing them of a reality that does not exist, then having them act as if that reality is true and real? Because we understand that is what happens whenever a dictator rises to power. And Hannah Arendt, the political theorist, actually mentioned this. She called it total domination. She said what happens is that the totalitarian anoints this a single concept, and in this concept they destroy the idea of freedom and merge it under that concept. Hitler did it with like the Aryan race. It happens. Marxist organizations do it with like the class distinctions. How do we stop this from happening here? How does the sort of majority of Americans that want to beat this kind of stuff, how do they thwart this enemy that is looming on the horizon?
Well, the silenced majority got to speak up. I know some of you are very afraid, very worried. You got canceled, you lost your job, or you might get fired. And there are lots of things could happen to us. I understand that. But in one way or another, if you fight smart, you can still voice yourself. You can talk to people privately, and you can educate the young people to know the truth. And I think the young people are the ones who were used, kind of like Mao used the Red Guards. They were religiously following this woke culture and think that they know everything, and they bought into it. And and their life can end up be like a red guards, very sad, and they will regret it. So as a silent majority, we have to be courageous. And I even encourage Democrats and liberals to speak up, because as I said, this is not a left or right issue or Democrat, Republican issue. This is about our country. I still have hope for America. Well, personally, I have no place to go. China is still one-party dictatorship. They're committing cultural genocide and biggest human rights abuser in the country. People have no voting rights, no gun rights, no free speech. I have to fight for all those rights in my new country, my refugee in America. We have no place to go. Chinese immigrants like me. So I encourage people, do what you can locally. Locally, you can support a bill, oppose bill. You can go to your local school board meeting to stop them teaching our students and racism. The critical race theory ideology is basically promoting racism, make one group of race of kids hate another group, and create more division. And also, please, as American citizens, let's not demonize each other. You know, I don't demonize people on the other side. And even though they disagree with me, I always trying to be nice and respectful. That's how you can have a calm conversations and trying to persuade them, because lots of people in the middle just don't know what's going on. They're confused and they're living in fear because the media, politicians want them to live in fear. Fearful people are easily to be controlled and manipulated, and want them totally rely on government as their saviors. We need to rely our families, our neighbors, our communities, and our churches. And we need to help each other in the time of needs, but not to fight each other. We need to push back on this identity politics. If one person say, no, it's not good enough, try 10, 100, thousands, millions. That's how you keep your country, our country, as a free country. Because let me tell you, if China becomes the #1 in the world, would you like to be dominated, controlled by one party in the world? It's called the Communist Party.
Right.
They're everywhere now. They are using Belt Road Initiative to buy other poor, smaller countries, and they use their second economic power to even get, you know, Major League Baseball to have a deal with them, so they can come out to accuse Georgia voting ID law is racist, even though there's about 70% of Black people in Georgia support voter ID law. You tell me who is divisive, who is put money above the principles, and who, you know, is really dictators in this country. In lots of silence, the majority of people feel like, oh, they're so helpless now, feel like this is a crazy world, everything's upside down, it's insane. We just had a coach in New Hampshire because he wanted his students to run track without wear a mask. He got fired. Is that wear a mask to run healthy? You know, you cannot breathe, fresh air. How do you perform as an athlete? So people are losing common sense, and they're fired people just disagree with them. It is American cultural revolution right now. So we have to save our country by stand up and push back to say enough is enough. This is our bottom line. We need to get all the people to push back, resist, and together.
Absolutely. No, you know, the great Ronald Reagan once said in his very legendary speech, A Time for Choosing, that America is the last stand for freedom. If we lose it here, it's over. He said that in the support of the Great Big Goldwater. And I think those words are even truer than they were back in the 60s when he said that speech, when the USSR was a very clear looming threat. Because guess what? The threat was outside, but now the threat's inside. So, Lily, thank you so much for your time. If you have any last things you'd like to say before we go, I'd appreciate it, but you are wonderful, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. And you are young man full of wisdom for your age. And you gave me hope. I hope for more and more young people will start to look into truth and data information on their own. Do not rely on their professors, their schools, and or their even employers. And people need to wake up. We are in a crisis situation. I'm very worried. I'm trying my best to educate people with my personal experience and personal stories. If you want to follow me, go to Lily for Liberty. And I have YouTube also, Lily Tang Williams. And actually I shared my interview with you on my YouTube too. So everybody got to do your part. And together we can still keep this country as a free country, not to run down, not to taking over by the Marxist and communist. So let's do it. Thanks, Christian.
No problem at all. And thank you so much for coming on. And everyone else, thank you. And please stay pensive. Bye-bye.